It is a cry of my heart. We can't help but realize, even from some of the prayer requests, how many hearts are crying out for all kinds of reasons in our world today. Many hearts are severely strained and broken, like we can all imagine in the daily coverage we get from the Gulf states. The great heartache on the part of so many people seeing their whole environment be so drastically changed, and for no cause of their own, having to live with the mess that has been encountered. I had an experience in my own life in going back to New York, my hometown. Anything I lived in no longer exists. But the first house that we lived, actually, I lived a few months in an apartment house, so I understand, I don't remember it, but that thing was gone. Then we moved to our two-family house that we had, and that lasted around 7-8 years till the Major Deegan Expressway in New York decided to come right through our front porch, and so that house is gone. We moved to another house on the other side of what was then the NYU campus uptown in the Bronx. And we lived many years there in that nice house. And then eventually came out west. My mother and father followed us out. My brother lives in the Los Angeles area, so we were all out west. And that house was sold, and going back one day, it was gone. We heard it was burned down. They put a cyclone fence around the property. And still, 10 years later, still a cyclone fence. Maybe we could put a monument up there or something. My past has been wiped out. The places we would go during the summer, all gone. And so all what I had grown up with is now gone. Now that's not that difficult to deal with, being presented with a fact like that. You just adapt and move on in life. But there are other times in life where people have to live with the hardness of things going into ruin right around them and in their own experience. It's very hard, for example, and many of us have known it, for a loved one, for example, slowly declining in health and feeling rather helpless about it. Or watching situations within the family as people drift apart and eventually divorce comes along and one feels rather helpless in dealing with that. Now, as I mentioned a little bit, music has always been important to me. There were times in the early 50s, all you had to do was play the first 3 notes of the song, what the song was, had them all down, and the hymns of the church were all down. So many songs and hymns can get me going. And back in the 50s, Nat King Cole had a song out that, in effect, said, "Have you ever watched the one you love slowly drifting away from you? And deep in your heart, you know there is nothing that you can do to stem the tide, to turn the tide, to make her stay, to ease the pain that you feel inside." It's a hard thing in life to get to that place of watching something slipping through your fingers. And there's nothing you can do about it. Well, perhaps there is something. We'll get back to that in a moment. Now, there are other hearts that are crying out, perhaps, but they are crying out in misdirected directions. They're crying out for things that really are no good for them. My wife has been an emergency room nurse, and she knows the story of so many individuals going from emergency room to emergency doctor's office to doctor's office, just trying to get hold of some kind of drug or medication that they're hooked on. And the hearts cry out, or the bodies cry out for something that's really no good for them. Or some, I'm sure, are watching America Has Talent or the American Idol, and you see there's thousands and thousands of people with big dreams. And how far are they going to go with these big dreams? Not very far. And their hearts will wind up crying out for the future that was never theirs. Or perhaps among the few, quote, lucky ones, they do, quote, make it and become an American Idol. Then we read in the newspapers what happens to these people. how many celebrities make just a mess of their lives. They get to the top and they trash it. And so their hearts are crying out from misdirected things that they have wanted in their life, and yet so many have hearts crying out to be just like them. Then there are hearts of those crying out, fanatics in the world who, out of desperation, are willing to blow up anybody, shoot anybody, stab anybody, because there's so much bitterness crying out within them. Again, hearts crying out in the wrong direction with anger and hostility. And we see something of that ill will seeping into politics these days, with so much negativity and so much viciousness and infecting our politics, that it is no longer a wholesome kind of thing. They would never get to the place where they would actually do anything physical, but they can do something personal and damaging and spiritual to other individuals. As Clarence Darrow said, I have never killed anybody, I have certainly enjoyed certain obituaries. And I think we can all tune ourselves to that, see what's going on, especially in politics. Last year I was in Germany during their national elections. My host, I was we sat down for almost a couple hours watching a debate. They had representatives from 4 leading parties sitting there. And they sat there for almost 2 hours, talking issues. Nobody called anybody anything bad. They didn't seek to interpret what somebody else was saying, and then they let them speak for themselves and simply spoke for what they were trying to accomplish. I thought, not too bad. Maybe that's why Germany just got into the bronze level of the World Cup. But something is going on there. And I think I saw something of the British politics also, that it was a rather civil kind of debate many times, and how much we need that kind of civility in our politics as hearts cry out for a better America here today. But when it all comes down to direction, our hymn has just said it for us. It is the cry of my heart to follow you. And if that is the intention, then no matter what other cries may be going on in our lives, if our prime intention is to follow God, then there is the wherewithal to deal with the rest of the crying that may be in our lives. And we follow God, the hymn says, teach me your holy ways, O Lord, so that I may walk in your truth. When I hear words like that, I can't help but think about the first Psalm and how this sets such a good direction for us, especially in the kind of world in which we live. Happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers, but their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. They are like trees, planted by rivers of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all they do, they prosper. The wicked are not so, but are like a chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish.